Today, I'm talking about something that every business owner faces, whether it's at the beginning, whether it's in the middle, whether it's, when you're really, really established. And that is launching something new. So it could be launching your business. It could be launching a particular service, a course, a product. Regardless, launching can feel quite overwhelming and it can feel a bit scary as well. When you're running the day to day and living your life and, making space to launch something is hard. I know that. I've launched several things in the last 8 years. But also, it can feel scary because sometimes you kind of have to take a leap of faith. For example, when I created the Launch, Teach and Fill group classes course, I couldn't launch it until I'd actually recorded everything and really put my time and money behind it. So, in this episode, I'm going to meander through some things that can really help you launch successfully. I'm going to give you some ideas for different scenarios. And we'll just try and make sure that when you are launching something, you're doing it in a way that doesn't feel quite so intimidating. Welcome to the Upgrade Your Education Business podcast. I'm your host, Sumantha, and I'm so pleased you're here. As an education business owner myself and a former teacher, I understand the nuances that only apply to us. So in this podcast, I share fluff-free, tailored and actionable ideas that you can mould to suit your needs. If you'd like to take this conversation further, please do reach out. I would love to meet you. And finally, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a review. That way, you'll be helping me help more people. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy. I've worked with over 100 education business owners now, and many of them have been launching something new, and that's what I've supported them with. Obviously, I've been in a situation many times where I'm launching something new, and this one thing keeps coming up. It's, what if no one buys it? What if this is too time consuming and it's not worth the effort that I'm about to put in? There's also this pressure to just get everything right and to go through all the possible what if scenarios and try and cover everything. It's a lot of pressure. Now, something I've learned is that trying to get everything perfect, it's too much. Often, if you try and aim for perfection, you don't end up launching that thing. So it's really about progress. People are quite forgiving with certain things that you might overthink about. So for instance, if you're watching this on video, you'll be seeing my new microphone, my new podcasting microphone. Now, I've spent some money on this, and this is the kind of microphone a professional podcaster uses. But for the last few years, I've been using a microphone that isn't fantastic. It was good enough, but it wasn't fantastic. It did compromise the quality of the audio. Even from a video point of view, I've got ring lights and I've got a MacBook now, whereas before I was recording on my webcam. I've still put that content out there. It has got me clients, it has helped me get to know people, and it's had an impact on people whom I may never work with. So the podcast is still serving its purpose, even though I haven't aimed for perfection. And the thing that really helped me was actually being under pressure in a way to release something every week. I don't have time to faff around with trying to get everything perfect straight away. I had to just learn on the job, so to speak, and just keep evolving, keep improving. So you'll never cover every single what if scenario. And it is scary. It is scary. But I quite like having a plan. So for instance, when I launched the book club last year in 2024, I knew that it might be something that I will let go of. I wasn't sure about it. It was the first thing I launched that I wasn't sure about. I loved the idea. I loved the benefit I would gain from it and the fact that it could be something about spreading impact. Everyone, we're in it together. But I was releasing 5 podcast episodes a week for it, and it was too much. It took me away from supporting my clients. I was burning out, and so I did let go of it. And so what I did when I launched it was I very intentionally chose a platform that allowed me to pause. It allowed me to pause membership without charging people. And so I was comfortable with knowing that I can launch this, but I have an exit plan. If I need it, I can just implement that exit plan. So sometimes just having a plan can help you launch something while alleviating some of that fear. But just circling back to trying not to focus on perfection, you can see a launch as something that's an opportunity to figure out what's working and what's not. And you can embed that in your language. For example, if you're selling something, you can say that there's an early bird or a launch offer. And you can make it really clear with the people you're working with that this is a bit of an experiment, give me feedback and I'll make improvements as I go along. I did that with the Tutors Mastermind. Before I launched it publicly, I invited clients who I was already working with to join. I gave them a discount and they gave me feedback. And they actually ended up staying for a really long time. But that was really invaluable. It meant that, firstly, I was earning money through it, which meant I could reinvest that money in improving it. But it also meant that I wasn't making assumptions. I wasn't making decisions based on what I thought. I was actually seeing what the experience was like for the people I'd created this for. And I did all of that before I launched it publicly. So there are different ways to approach this. Even if it's something that's a pre-recorded course, you can still do research beforehand. You can build things like waiting lists to just gauge the interest. Is there a demand for this? Now, one of the ways to launch in a way that's skinny, so to speak, where it's simplified, is to build on what's already working for you and using things you already have. I'll give you some examples. Let's say you're thinking about creating a course or some kind of resource bank for your students, for your clients. Maybe you will repurpose lesson plans and resources that you've already created rather than creating fresh ones. As time goes on, as you've tested the idea, then you can safely invest your time, potentially even money. You might hire proofreaders and graphic designers and whatever. You can do all of that later. But to start with, you can repurpose what you already have. That's not cheating. That's using something that's tried and tested. And actually, you can put that forward as a strength. Also, instead of actually launching something brand new and fresh, you can expand what you already offer. So just a really quick example off the top of my head, as a tutor, you're delivering lessons, maybe you're delivering group classes, one-to-ones, however you're doing it, you're delivering lessons. Maybe in addition to that, you can provide an extra add-on package where, as well as my lessons, you also get access to, and let's say it's an exam group, it could be specifically designed exam papers to give them exam practice, but also to target what that particular student needs. For instance, ages ago, years ago, I actually had an add-on, which was this homework package. So instead of me just giving homework every single week, they would get more in-depth homework. They would get my video feedback with that. They would get particular assignments that I designed specifically for that student. And it was an add-on and it was something I was able to sell independently. Now, I stopped doing it just purely because I didn't like how much marking and workload it added. And there was a logistical element where I gave people deadlines. If they didn't meet it, I had to chase them. So there was a flaw in my plan. It wasn't for me, but I tried it. And it's an example of an idea where you're just extending, you're building upon what you already do. And you're thinking about, how can I support my students even more? What do they need that they're currently not having access to, or that they would love to get access to through me? So by using what you already have, you're not starting from scratch as such. And that can feel less scary because you already have evidence that what you're offering works and that there's a demand for it. And also it's a lot more doable. You're just adding layers to your business. But when you're already busy with clients and you lead a busy life, finding time to plan and execute a launch can feel impossible. And this is where prioritization and time management really kicks in. A lot of my clients, when they work with me with this, it's not necessarily that they don't know how to launch. It's the fact that they are just syncing with all the different things they feel they need to do and they want accountability. They kind of want to hand over the thinking and the planning to me. So often I support people with that. And often I put together basically a project plan that we can monitor that's broken up into these bite-sized chunks so that they're making progress every single week. They've got accountability, so they're getting it done because they've invested money in working with me. They are they're actually doing it, rather than sort of relying on themselves and thinking, oh, I'll do it next week, I'll do it on the weekend, and then other stuff get in the way. So having some form of accountability, whether you pay for it or not, can be really useful. But something I've spoken about a few times that I think is a really useful principle to remember is the 80-20 rule. So this principle basically says that with almost anything, 80% of your results comes from 20% of your efforts. So if you apply this to when you're launching, you can also analyze where you should actually put your efforts. Now, this massively helps me because I'm a big overthinker and I will focus on things that, when I think about it, they don't actually make a huge impact, but it's that whole thing of trying to get everything perfect. So when I remember the 80-20 principle, it kind of forces me, it streamlines my brain into focusing on the things that matter, on the things that actually contribute to those results. So let's say you're designing social media posts to support this launch. Instead of worrying about designing the perfect image and writing the perfect post, prioritize gaining momentum on social media, prioritize getting the awareness out there. Maybe you don't just do it through social media, maybe you do it through other channels, maybe you network with people and you talk to them about it in person or in online meetings. You're coming at it from different angles instead of being laser focused on one thing and one tiny detail of that thing that doesn't actually have a huge impact. Now, just as a caveat, of course, if you are advertising on social media or doing whatever on social media for your business, yes, having a clean image, following some fundamental copywriting rules, all of these things do boost your chances of success, because you're going to get success when someone stops and actually pay attention to your content. But we don't want to go the other way and over focus on it. You know, you can tweak and refine as time goes on. But the principle of analyzing what already works in your business is so, so powerful, because when you're launching something new, you assume that everything around that launch needs to also be new. You think, maybe I need video content, maybe I need this platform, maybe I need to do a webinar. You think of all these new things and you try and throw everything at it. But if you just take a step back and think, well, how have I actually successfully got clients in the past? How did I successfully launch my business? What actually works? You may as well just recycle those methods because it already works for you. And different things work for different people. So you might have someone who is selling a course on how to successfully run a webinar. Well, they'll be telling you that a webinar is the only way to go. You might have someone who's an Instagram specialist and they do Instagram coaching. Well, they'll be telling you that Instagram's the way to go. But the reality is that if you've been doing this a while, you will already know what kind of things work and what kind of things don't for you and for your business. A lot of it is about how you execute, the consistency, all of those things. So if something simply isn't sustainable for you, then that method isn't going to work. Now, if you're brand new, if you don't have that data and if you don't have that experience to make that judgment call, then yes, you need to do some experimenting. And if you want to fast track that, then you may need to work with someone like me who can say to you that, look, chances are this is the thing that's actually going to work. And that will reduce that time you have to spend with trial and error. Either way, whether you do it yourself, whether you do it with someone else, it is important to figure out what actually works for you, your business, and really focus on those and scrap the rest. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. We have loads of different marketing methods in front of us. You don't have to do all of them. Also, when you're launching and when you're presenting your launch, if you like, to your audience, try and break it up into phases. So it's a really good idea before you start actually talking about the thing that you're selling, start building a bit of excitement, start talking about the principles. So let's say, for example, let's say I was relaunching the book club. Let's say it was a brand new thing that I was launching actually. I would probably start by sharing stories and starting conversations about books that I've read that have had huge impact. I would ask for book recommendations. I would get people involved in the conversation. I might introduce a kind of, wouldn't it be great if this kind of thing existed? Well, I'm actually thinking about something like this. What do you think? Who would be interested? In fact, when I did launch it, I gathered in a Facebook thread. I just gathered loads of interest. I then transferred people to my email list. I said, right, if you're serious about this, please sign up. You're not actually committing to joining the book club, but I will email you the details when they're ready. And then people from there joined, and then people from social media afterwards joined. So you can see that these phases can be really simple, they can be really quick, but it's important to look at the phases, because if you just turn up and you say, right, here's this new thing that I'm offering, you haven't really given people a chance to get excited about it. By the time you actually share that link to buy or to book that call with you, whatever action you want people to take, you want them to be ready. You want them to be brimming with anticipation and excitement for that thing. Again, this doesn't have to be huge, but it's worth planning. Now let's tackle the nerves. Even seasoned business owners feel nervous about launching something new. Sometimes it's a sort of good nerves, like it's a good nervous energy, excitement. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're anxious. You're worried that, what if no one signs up? What if this just doesn't work and I publicly look like a failure? Now, these fears are totally normal, but they don't have to hold you back. In fact, if you follow some of the things that I've already shared, like speaking to people beforehand, it gives you that element of safety. And it's a good idea to have from a strategic point of view, because you're absolutely right to ask, well, what if no one buys? That's a legitimate question. So how can you work backwards from that and try and safeguard yourself? Ultimately, the question behind that question is there a demand for this? Are people going to want this? Do they need this? Will they pay this for it? So you can trial it. You can talk to people, have conversations. Years ago, when I contemplating hiring tutors, before I even spoke to tutors, before I invested any time and money into it, I spoke to all my clients and I spoke to people in every single discovery call. And I said, how would you feel if I could, guarantee a really high quality tutor, someone I have vetted to teach your child, if it's not me? And I got a sense of how people were responding. And I also managed their expectations so that when they went on my waiting list, if I did choose to hire tutors, they would be ready. I even had it on the waiting list form of what's your preference. You definitely only want to be taught by me. I made very clear that will mean waiting for longer, or you're happy to be taught by someone who's vetted by me. And so many people chose that they'd be happy with that. So you get this idea of interest beforehand in all these different ways. I'm trying to share a variety of scenarios and examples so that as you're listening, you have that light bulb moment where you think, actually, I'm going to do this. So just think about what you have access to, what you think your audience will respond to, the different means you have in front of you to test your idea, to road test it before you create it and invest all your time and energy and money and everything into it. And I promise you, it will really help launching with confidence. You might still have that little niggle of what if no one buys, but you know that that's just a normal part of the nerves. But actually, when you think strategically, you've already had X number of people express interest. Now, if you're really struggling with this, here are 3 tips to just keep you going, to help alleviate some of those fears, and just to give you a bit of comfort. The first thing is to focus on the bigger picture. Let's take the worst case scenario. You launch something and it flops. No one buys it. One person buys it. Well, here's the big advantage. You have just learnt so much from that launch. You've probably learnt more than any business coach could teach you, because you have just learnt what worked, what didn't work. You have understood where there is a demand. You've just understood more about your audience. Those insights are so valuable, because I could teach you every single thing I know. I could teach you every strategy I know. But the thing that's guaranteed to work is when we actually see some data, when we actually have some real life insights rather than making assumptions. In fact, I have 2 of my one-to-one clients right now where I've asked them to pause on booking another session with me, because I want them to carry out a strategy for a period of time so that we then have real life data that we can use to tweak that strategy. So I promise you that even that worst case scenario isn't a terrible scenario. Also, celebrate the small wins. It's really easy to get hung up on numbers. So you might launch something and say, right, I need 10 people to sign up for this to be viable, for me to consider this launch a success. What if one person signs up? Well, that one person isn't a number, they're a person. They're a person who has put their faith in you, who have been excited about this thing that you're launching. Now, if you get one person, that means you can get another person. And if you get another, you can get another. So when you break up that measure of success into those small stages, into those small wins, not only will you be in a much more positive mindset, you won't be doubting yourself. You'll also be thinking strategically, that's the way to do it. Rather than thinking, I want X number of clients, you focus on those smaller wins and then you tweak targets based on what's happened. So let's say you did get that one student or that one client, one sign up instead of 10. Well, then you can analyze, right, what is it about what I did that worked? What do I think didn't work? Let me try something else and see whether that yields a better result. So you've got the ball rolling with that trial and error kind of element of things. Now, there also has to be an element of trust. You have to have a little faith. If you've done the research, if you've done everything you can to gauge whether there's an interest for this thing that you're launching, then you have to at some point just launch and you have to just see what happens. You have to have an element of faith because you can't cover every possible scenario. You can't have a fortune teller tell you that this is the exact thing that's going to happen. There's no certainty. To find out, you have to just do it. Now, why is launching new things even important? Maybe you're in a situation where you've listened to this and you're thinking, I'm really happy with everything, actually. I don't want to launch anything, and that's okay. This is your business and you can take it at the pace you like. Some people like going really, really fast. I personally like slow and steady growth. I get intimidated in a way. I get overwhelmed, actually. That would be a better word. I get overwhelmed when things grow really, really fast. I know it's a good problem to have, but it feels stressful. I'll give you an example. When I launched Upgrade Your Education business, I just assumed that it would take a while to gain momentum. I made that assumption. And so I just started by having a Facebook group. And I remember running, it was something like a workshop that I charged something like £10 or something for. Anyway, people were asking me, so how do I work with you? And I didn't have anything in place because I made this assumption that it would take ages. So I quickly set up some Calendly meetings and was like, right, I offer one-to-one. That's what I can offer right now. And it grew really, really fast and I couldn't keep up and I didn't have things in place and I was worried I was missing opportunities because I hadn't planned for it. And actually, because of that experience, it's why whenever I work with someone and they're launching something, a really big piece of training we do is how we can prepare for success. It's a really big piece of work I do with people because not only is that excellent for your mindset and it shows in your confidence and your language and the way you speak to people. So all of that's great, but it also means that you won't be in that situation where actually if it just takes off, you're going to struggle to cope with it. So make sure you're preparing for success and make sure you take that leap of faith. You have to accept that that's just a part of launching. But if you want to grow your business and if you're thinking, actually, yeah, I really want to launch new things, then the way you view it's quite important for the long-term strategy. Growing your business, adding more things to your business isn't just about making more money. It might be, but it's not just about that. It's also about staying relevant and serving your clients better. It's giving them more options or maybe giving them a better experience, making them feel more supported. And all of that feeds back into your business in the long term. So when you're launching something new, try and take that view. Money is important, and I don't think we should be apologetic for aiming for more money. But there needs to be that supported angle because there are loads of ways to make more money, right? So we want to make sure that what we're offering is actually something that enhances our business rather than complicating it. And finding that balance can be a bit tricky at times. So I'm putting it in here for you to think about. A conversation I have with many people when they're launching is, well, actually, they come to me and essentially they say, I want to future-proof my business. That's usually the trigger point that makes someone want to launch something, in my experience with the people I work with. And it's usually because they've realized that the way they're working right now perhaps isn't sustainable. Maybe they feel a bit scared that, I'm in a situation where if I don't work, I don't get paid. Well, what if I want to go on holiday? What if I get ill? What if, what if, what if? And so they want to kind of future proof, and adding these layers can give them that element of security. So when you're thinking about this, think about why you're actually adding this new thing and use that to steer how you're developing. Think about the future and think about the impact what you're launching will have. Sometimes you just have to do it and you learn, like my homework idea that, was too much work for me, or the book club idea that was too much work for me. It was too much, I need a team behind me to be able to do something like that. So think about the long term, but don't be worried in case you've made the wrong decision, because as I've shown you through this episode, and if you've been connected with me for a long time, you really can change your mind. You can change your mind anytime you like, so don't be afraid of trying new things. Now, I've talked about quite a few different things, so I'll do a really quick list of some actionable takeaways. The first thing is to start small. Test your idea with a smaller audience, or maybe have a pilot before you go large, before you go big and really put everything into it. Get opinions from other people. The second is when you're thinking about how to launch this new thing and how much time to put into it, think about whether you have any options to repurpose what you already have, just to get more out of your efforts already. Can you build upon your existing offering rather than launching something from scratch? It will make the launch a lot easier. Also, number 3, prioritize high impact activities. Don't be like me, getting hung up with small things that actually don't have a big impact. Prioritize the things that actually make a difference. Number 4, embrace imperfection. People are a lot more forgiving than you give them credit for. I know it's been my experience. And that doesn't mean that you need to compromise on the level of service or the quality of what you're offering. Of course, you should strive for that high quality and that high standard. But we often get caught up with the things that actually don't signal high quality. They're just the finishing touches, they're the polishes. And you can do that later, you can do it as you go along. And number 5, make sure you use your existing network. Don't forget about your current clients. They're a goldmine for feedback, and they're potential buyers. If you're adding something that supports them better, if it supports them even more, then they're also people who you have a really warm relationship with, and you can launch without feeling that fear of what if no one buys. So launching things in your business doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be intimidating or scary. There are natural nerves that come with anything new, and that's totally normal. But there are various things you can do to mitigate true risk, because there are risks with launching something new and you can mitigate them. I hope you found this useful. If you're launching something new, I would love to hear about it. I love everything business, and launching is one of the most exciting things that you can do in your business. I find it very exciting. So do share with me. Thank you once again for spending your time with me, and you'll hear from me on Wednesday. Would you like to take this discussion further? Perhaps you have some questions, or you'd like more ideas on tailoring your business. If so, book a free discovery call through the link in the show notes.